Also, you have to do your own laundry.
Stigma that we're all depressed kids.
And Greek life is not the social center of Berkeley.
Okay. Hey, Kavina, thanks so much for taking the time out of your schedule. I know you're a really busy gal, to answer a few questions that I think a lot of people would be really interested about. Just about your experience at Cal, your major, and some hopefully fun experiences that you can just share with everyone who's watching. So yeah, let's get started. So I know what your major is, but would you mind sharing what major or majors you're pursuing, and was there a reason that you chose that major?
Yeah, so I am a double major in economics and also media studies. So both are within the College of Letters and Science. I didn't come in thinking I was going to major in media studies. I was pre-Haas and Econ, so one or the other. Considering that Haas has such a low acceptance rate, I was also expecting like there's a strong chance I'll study economics, and I was okay with that. And when I came in, I kind of realized, like looking at my schedule, whether I got into Haas or not, I was going to have a lot of room to do something else if I wanted. I studied yearbook in high school. I was in like yearbook staff for 3 years, and like I was editor, and like I really enjoyed it. I was like, I liked photos and like photography and like talking to people, but I don't really like to write that much. So like journalism minor wasn't the vibe, but wanted to do something in like media. And lo and behold, Berkeley has media studies, which is essentially their form of communications, marketing, everything about the digital age combined into one.
As a pre-med student, I really envy people who can kind of dabble in all the different departments. And that's really something that I feel like I struggled with, at least at my time at Cal so far. Just feeling there's so much to do and not enough time to do them all. Did you feel like Berkeley lived up to everything that you thought college was going to be? I guess, have you enjoyed the experience thus far?
Yeah, I think when you think about college, you think about what it's like, what is the independence you're going to gain, like the friends you're going to have, and like what activities you're going to get involved in. Because you essentially you're taking high school, especially depending on what high school you go to, and like raising it to an exponential level. But also you have to do your own laundry, so it's like a little bit different. Also a little bit of a learning curve. Let's be honest, most of us don't know how to do our laundry till we get to college. And I was going in, I have an older sister who's 2 years older than me, and she also went to a UC. She went to UC Davis. So she was like, oh, like you can, like, and she was in a sorority. And she's like, Greek life at Berkeley is massive. If you want to go in and you want to make friends, like you should try joining Greek life. Like maybe you won't like it, maybe you will. I ended up liking it, loving it. And obviously like I'm in Greek life with you. So like go Bears, go PHC, and like living there and like having that be part of like, that's a huge part of my experience. And I think that's like, while some people might say it's very stereotypical, maybe that's what you need to enjoy like your college experience. Berkeley has thousands of students, and you come in and you like don't really know where you should go, what you should dabble in, like you should continue playing your sport, if you try a different sport, if you pick up sports.
That's true.
There's so many things that you can do, and I think I really lived with an expectation. And being able to have like going to football games and like hanging out with my friends, going to a coffee shop, cramming, pulling an all-nighter, like all those things have happened at Berkeley, and like have had bad times, have had good times. And so it was like a full-blown college experience, which is why I want to go back so badly for
I know.
senior year.
You and me both. Okay, so this is going to be very geared towards you. So as a pre-med student and coming in kind of telling myself that I knew I was pre-med, but knew that I didn't want to just go after like the pre-med clubs. I was someone who's big about like trying to try out all the business clubs and whatever other availabilities with extracurriculars that are offered at Cal. So I remember as a freshman, I went to a lot of the business club meetings, and I think something that's super unique to Cal is just that everything is literally truly so hard to get into, and that extends to clubs. So I know with business clubs, because this is kind of up your alley, you have that first week where it's really, really intense, and you're going to like every single night from like, God knows, like 6 to 9 p.m., where you're, have to dress up in your business attire, have these conversations where they're meaningful so that the people remember you, and then you have to submit an application. And then from there, you like need to figure out if you've even passed the application round. And then from there, you have like group interviews and individual interviews. Would you mind like speaking to that? Any, I guess, advice that you have people who are interested in going down that route? Or just, I guess, your feelings about how difficult it is to join a business club or any club at Cal in general?
Berkeley, and I was entering as a freshman. I didn't do any previous research on clubs at Berkeley. Like I showed up and then we had like the few couple days of like club rush. What is it? Calapalooza, I think
It feels like
something like
such
that.
a long
And
time ago.
such a long time ago, and I didn't know anything about the clubs at Berkeley. I wasn't even considering, oh, it was like, oh, a business club is something I should apply to, like a consulting club is something I should be interested in. I was like, what is consulting? Like, what really is business? Like, what do I want to get into? And I think that was something that I was so overwhelmed by so many things happening as a freshman that the one advice I would give is that if you were really interested in being in a club part of like your college experience, then you should do prior research to it, not even if it's your first semester, but even if it's your second semester and you would take your first semester to settle in, they still take people in the second semester, and then you might also have like a better handle on things by then.
Definitely.
But I didn't start doing that because I like got into Greek life, and then I immediately started like I joined the water polo team, so I had like practices, and then I was busy with school because I was like so many things are happening. Of course, the laundry, that too. And I didn't start to like think about what I would really get out of a business club until the beginning of my junior year. And I still had the same opportunities, and I even had really good experience from my past 2 years being at Berkeley that I could like put on my resume and show that I'm actively interested. I'm like a better communicator. I'm a better writer. I understand networking, and I could like go to these events and like have those meaningful conversations.
Right.
Clubs have so much value to them because not only are they like a small knit community and so you like make a lot of friends, but you gain so much professional experience from them, and that's something that I wish I had known more going into college, because I would have made a better effort of like applying as a freshman and sophomore instead of doing it right when I was a junior. And I like had to deal with the same thing. I went through application rounds and like the first couple like networking events. I did a group interview. I did like I had a couple final round like individual interviews, and I like didn't get those opportunities because I didn't have experience doing it beforehand. I didn't go through it as a freshman. I didn't really understand what these consulting clubs were like looking for and what they wanted. And having gone through the experience, if I like wanted to do it again second semester as a junior, then like I might have gone through it. But I got so busy with school, it ended up not being something that was meant for me, but it could be meant for someone else who was like avidly interested in like, I want to be in a consulting club. I want to be in an economics club. I want to be in the finance club.
Yeah, no, no, I definitely agree. And we've talked about this many times. Like, it sucks when you're rejected from a club, but you were still able to figure out what it was that you wanted to do, even though you didn't join like a business club at Cal.
Yeah.
So how did you figure out if there was one that was more in line with what you wanted to do, or maybe was more beneficial in networking, or whatever that reason was?
So in order of like balancing social life, academics, and then also all the extracurriculars that you want to do, it's pretty difficult. But I think if you come in to Berkeley and you choose something and you start getting like involved in something, it's definitely okay to step away from that activity. Especially one thing, as you go throughout the years, your academics are going to get harder. So, and if you say you come in undecided, you really have to like buckle down and eventually declare a major. And like you have all these resources to help you do that. And also your extracurriculars can help you do that. But you eventually have to like pick and choose your classes and focus your academics in a certain way, especially if the major that you're applying to has a certain GPA requirement. And so it becomes more important to focus on school, which is like economics has a GPA requirement. I don't think media studies does, but not sure. Don't ask me. Yeah, I don't know. I'm declared, but who knows? And it becomes like about balancing what you do. Like I joined Greek life. I decided to stick with Greek life because it was a big part of my social experience, and I found academic value in it because we had study nights. I got to meet people. We had like, there's so many girls in the house that can help you. They're older. They've been through the same experiences you've gone through. And so in that sense, I was like my academic help because I had all that like people and all these people like older than me that I could rely on. So I wanted to stick with it. That was important to me. I joined water polo. The first semester was really fun because we were off season. Second semester, I continued doing it. And it got a little harder. I didn't enjoy the coach. I was not having fun. I was like, okay, this is great. Bye. And then I joined again next year because I liked it more again because the coach was gone and everything was back to good. But picking and choosing what you want to do is really important because if you give something up, it doesn't matter how long of a part of it, it's like your life it's been. I've been playing, for example, a sport since I was little, and then to automatically come into college and then decide to stop playing a sport felt like I was taking a big part of myself away. But that doesn't necessarily mean you can't direct that energy to something else. And I think that's really important. I work part-time at two separate places on campus, one of them remote, one of them in person. And that takes up my time in the sense that like I feel like I have real working experiences. I work with a manager, I work with team members, I like work with all these like back office people, and like I apply those skills and those jobs in a sense that like I learn a little bit more working on the ground than I would if I was like maybe in like a club and I was working in a team and we were doing something that was kind of like offhand. I can work a little bit more hands-on, and so I was like, that makes a little bit more sense for me to do. But it depends on what you're interested in and how much time you have, what your major is, if you're double majoring, all these different things go into it.
You kind of touched on this in terms of the social life at Cal.
Mm-hmm.
So, there's a stigma that we're all depressed kids. And while I agree with that statement a little bit, you also mentioned that Greek life is a part of your life. And obviously that's how we know each other. What is your stance on social life, having a social life? You've been able to achieve that through Greek life. What about someone who maybe hasn't?
My sister's in Greek life, so she was like, you should try joining, like, right off the bat, enter as a freshman, and like if you like it, then stick with it, that's great. If you don't, then it's fine. And I think that's something that I know we really shouldn't say. We want to like express Greek life to everyone, like we are welcoming, we are inclusive, we are everything. And that for some people that can genuinely be the place, but for some people I also feel like it's not. It can be overwhelming, it can be frustrating to constantly have to do, like, also because like meetings and like we have events that takes up part of your time. So maybe it's something that you just can't commit to, maybe it's something you can't financially commit to. So it is definitely so possible to make friends at Berkeley when you are in Greek life. And I say this in such a strong sense. You don't have to be outgoing. You don't have to be like charismatic in every single sense. You can walk into a lecture and sit down, and if you turn to the person next to you and say hi, like they're simply just as terrified as you are. Like they'll probably say hi back, which is, I think it's very easy if you're a freshman to be in the dorm and like become good friends with your hallway. Especially if you're living in like an open floor, like where you have a more communal bathroom and you're not in a suite. It's really fun. It's a little awkward at first, but you kind of embrace it and it like gets fun. And it can be super weird and it can be kind of odd, but it's like your college experience, and that becomes part of your social life. It doesn't matter if you get mad at them because like they're making noise and you're trying to study, but then like sometimes you're the one making the noise and someone else is trying to study. So it balances out. Any single way that you can find, you can make Berkeley a smaller community, make friends, whether it's through a club, if it's through a sport, if it's something you sign up for and you're doing it on your own, but you meet people when you're there, like an event, and like both of you got rejected from the same club, you can make a friend.
Yeah.
It happens. Or it can be Greek life. And Greek life is not the social center of, or still go enjoy football games and sports and tailgating and all this stuff. And you don't need to be in Greek life.
Yeah, I also agree that I want to kind of touch upon how you can make friends with the people on your floor and how that might take some time. Because
you would know that like more than anyone. I feel like you're friends with all the people from your floor.
Yeah, but the thing is, the funniest thing is my floor, like no one spoke to anyone probably for the first 3 months. And my roommate and I were just always like, what's wrong with our floor? But then we somehow just got super tight. We've been to Lake Tahoe together. We had like a break trip and whatnot, and we still keep in touch. So I definitely agree to that statement. Okay, so the next question I think is going to be really helpful for students who are thinking applying to Cal or gotten to Cal. Did you have internships in high school? And then did that shape you getting an internship at Cal? Just because I feel like Cal is pretty unique in that, or it just has this culture around it that makes you feel like, oh, I should be doing something over the summer.
Okay, so definitely in high school, no, I didn't have any internships. I didn't have any like recorded paying job. I like tutored voluntarily. I like tutored like tutoring lists. Someone like contacted me, can you tutor my child in mathematics, and like got paid for it. But like no like serious job, no serious volunteering. And this is because I essentially took my experiences that I did in high school and I made them a huge part of my life. Like I mentioned, I was in yearbook for 3 years. I became a staff member. I was a sports editor, so I was one of the editors. And then my senior year, I was co-editor in chief. And I made this a huge part of my college application and a huge part of my resume. I made it my job, which was so real. I spent like 20, 30 hours a week, like driving to places, taking photos, editing, like talking with people. Obviously, like the class itself, which is like 5 hours a week, 0 period for 3 years. Literally like 6:40 in the morning, I'm at school. And if I have practice before that, I'm at school at 5 o'clock. I go to practice, I shower, go to school.
Oh, jeez.
What? Like, who does that?
Yeah, we're just like,
I was at school for hours and hours. If I had practice, like yearbook, school, and then like a game, I get home at like 7. I'm just like, great, I've been at school for 14 hours. Like someone, like, when do I sleep? I don't know. You don't need, I personally don't think that you need a job or internship to get into a school as good as Berkeley. And this is because you take the experiences that you do through high school and you make it a large part of yourself. I took yearbook and I made it my job. I rose through ranks. I understood what it meant to communicate with other people, to communicate with my staff, like advisor, who was like my teacher. And I committed myself to it. I went to camp for 2 years for it, for like a 3-day camp. And so I like had those experiences and got to meet people and I had all that stuff. And then I did the same thing with my sport. I like continued it on. I grew up, I did better, and I got myself in a leadership position and I made it a part of my life. If it's a 3-month experience versus someone's 3-year experience, that they have the same growth and evolution as a person, I think it's the same. And I think I've went to a lot of admissions meetings about how it's essentially the same. Because they want to see what you get out of the experience, not necessarily what the experience was. My summer after my freshman year, I didn't have an internship. I worked 2 part-time jobs. I worked at a pool store in retail. I was a sales associate and I was a youth swim coach. And that was like my job. And I took that job and I still have people. I am a junior in college and I go to an interview for a full-time internship and soon it'll be a full-time job. And they're going to ask me, they're going to look at my resume and say, you were a sales associate. Can you describe a situation in which you had customer interaction, or like describe a situation in which like you help solve a problem? It doesn't matter what you do. You take the experience, what you have, and the things that you can get, and you use it to your advantage. Let's see. I did an internship through global internships through Berkeley the summer after my sophomore year. So I was a sales intern at a hotel in London, part-time. I didn't do that much, but everything I learned, I still apply it today. And in my interviews and in my behavioral questions, anytime they ask me, when was a time you faced a problem? When was a time you had a huge project? When was a time when you had to work professionally? When was a time when blah, blah, blah. All that stuff comes back to your small experiences that you might have had.
Yeah, so as a bio major, we don't have a lot of behavioral questions. So for an internship, I guess for you, as either from the media studies perspective or from like the econ perspective, what does a typical internship interview look like?
For both media studies, kind of oriented, so like marketing and communications kind of oriented, customer experience oriented, and also like consulting, business analysts, that sort of thing. There's always a first round. First round is always usually 20 to 30 minutes of behavioral questions. They ask you, tell me about yourself. Can you elevator pitch your personality to these people? And it's not just about saying, I'm a junior, I do this, and this is what I study. You say, I'm a junior, I do this is why I'm interested, and this is why it applies to your position. And you continue, you go on, you tell them about yourself. They'll ask you situation questions, like I mentioned. Tell me about a time where you did something. What do you find interesting about this company? Like, you have to know the company. You have to be at least on a surface level, be able to do those things. And then at the end, they'll always ask you, do you have any questions for us? This is where your knowledge of the research you did on a company really comes into play, because you can ask really good questions and they'll like recognize that, wow, this person really put the time and effort in. And this is something that I really pride myself on, is if I can get past the resume screening and stuff, I usually get past the first round of interviews because I put a lot of prep into them. Sometimes they're not even looking for someone that's skilled. They want someone that can communicate effectively, that can speak with confidence, that is articulate in their answers. And really demonstrates the qualities that they want from a worker, not necessarily the intellect that they're looking for. Because an intern is someone that they're going to teach and they're going to mold. But not only that, they think, obviously, like, we're all college students. We go to Berkeley, and some of us will go to Berkeley and will have a really high intellect. So not only do they want someone who's smart, they want someone who they can teach properly and they can like communicate with. They would be happy to work with you. And if you go on to a second round, I've had a marketing and sales interview, an on-site for them. It was like basically 5 people came around in the cubicle, and it was 30-minute interview each, and they all were from different departments. So they asked me more oriented questions towards their department. A lot of the same thing, behavioral questions. What would you do in this situation? If it's a startup, they'll ask you, how would you expand so and so? So this is where your knowledge of like what the company is comes into play. How would you solve a certain problem? How would you approach a certain problem? So for financial consulting, kind of like those economic source like interviews, they're going to have the same thing, the behavioral 30 minutes or something like that. And your next round or your multiple rounds afterwards usually includes cases. So consulting cases or like financial cases will be focused on how do you approach a certain business question. So a lot of the first rounds of these will be like market sizing questions. So they'll ask you something super random. Like I've gotten, how many gas stations are there in the US? Like, I don't know how many gas stations there are in the US, but you can go online and you have to practice. So market sizing questions are really like short and quick, effective way that they evaluate how well you understand something or approach a problem. Make it past the market question, and they'll even ask you like research questions. I've had interviews where they've like given me a laptop and then just like left me alone. So I have to like research something and like really quickly find an answer and be able to explain it and like give my understanding of it. I've even had like a Zoom one in which the guy just like muted himself and like gave me like control of like his laptop, and I could go through the PowerPoint that I needed to go through. And then I had an hour to Google and find all the answers to the question and do the math myself.
That is so crazy. Like science is so different.
It's a lot.
Anyways, on a different note, other than, preparing for trying to get a job, what have you been doing with all the time that you've spent at home during quarantine? I know you've been cooking a lot, so I'll insert some
oh my God
photos.
Well, academically, so of course, like a lot of students that have gotten their plans derailed a little bit, like COVID, I was still interviewing and applying for jobs. And then it became the situation of, do I start to focus, okay, now it's like finals. Like, do I focus on like doing well in my classes, or do I focus on like getting an internship? But if I get an internship, is it like the one I want? Is it going to be subpar? Is it going to be necessary enough to like my future professional advancement versus like failing my class? And this is where we get back to that balance thing. You really have to pick and choose what is more important in the situation. And so I had to start dwindling down on how much I was focusing on applying to jobs and start to focus on getting on school, which is not something that I'd really been doing that much during the school year because I was so focused on getting an internship, but the priority had changed. And then that's academically. And I joined a volunteer organization to like work 5-10 hours a week with their people department. So it's like marketing, outreach, and like helping their organization grow. And it's been kind of fun. So it's like just volunteer and like helping out with them and having a little bit of an experience. So I like tried to jam pack my summer as much as I could because I have nothing else to do. And then socially, I spend time with my family at home. I cook, like you mentioned. So I like to make smoothie bowls. I make a lot of smoothie bowls and like omelets and avocado toast and stuff for my family. I also do cook real food too, but I enjoy this more because it's like less effort. And then I also make a lot of cocktails. So I've gotten like really into, I've convinced my dad to buy copious amounts of alcohol, and I use like the frozen. Anyways, yeah. And so my pretty cocktails, also mocktails, both, but mostly cocktails. I cook with my mom a lot, which is fun. And I exercise because I'm bored out of my mind.
say you're not doing anything when it's so clearly evident that you are spending your time wisely. And hopefully that's through these videos, as I like interview more people, that'll be kind of like the general consensus that you guys get. Like a lot of Cal students are so driven, but you always end up finding something that you're passionate about and something that you can really invest in. So thank you, Kavina, for taking the time out, because I know how busy you are with making all
I'm
that.
really not, but
Yeah, okay, well, stay tuned for my next video, I guess.
yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ashley.